a letter from. I got a review copy from Sega. So
Oh, what?
the I interviewed him yesterday. The Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal from Sanzaru Games. There it is,
Oh,
and
cool.
look at they send out now. They give you these. It's the I don't know if I can show this. Maybe I can. The reviewer's guide.
That's
So it gives
great.
me an intro and a walkthrough, the controls. I guess it's just for people who are like, the character can't run, and then they clearly say, yeah, they can. They can sprint right there. Anyway.
Is it different from the Wii game?
It is, actually. It was developed by the guys who worked on one of the Sly Cooper games. The lead designer actually worked on Turok, the Dinosaur Hunter.
Oh, wow. So completely
So,
different thing.
yeah, so it's, they have a background in, like, character platformers. But, yeah, so, but that's enough about them. Let's talk about your books. We got 2 of them. Look at that.
Hey!
All right, and I opened the book an hour or so ago because I figured
See, he gave in.
I couldn't wait, and also because I figured that instead of Darren bragging about some of the things, it'd be nice to have an outside person do so. So I should at least familiarize myself with a little bit more than the aesthetics of it, which are, of course, beautiful.
Oh, it is a beautiful book. Not Console Wars. No, I'm just kidding. Both of them are. But, I mean, I got to say, though, guys, like, this is a nice combo right here. You know, you got the story, you got the visuals to back it up.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I know you planned that. No.
The Christmas combo. We planned it.
And here's the Tom Kalinske
Oh, wow.
message. He was nice enough to send that over.
Great.
I'm going to actually lock my screen in so everyone can see the book so it doesn't jump around. All right, so here's the book. We've done a podcast before where you actually talked about the whole background of it. How long would you say the process was from conception to right today?
The first time we spoke to Sega was 2 years ago when we first came up with the idea and they approved it. And we started speaking to Japanese developers. So I'd say it's been about a 14-month process, sort of condensed together to put the book together.
Oh wow! So you think it's worth it? Should I open it?
Yeah, crack it open. I've got to say, everyone says, and you've got about like 5 minutes before it dissipates, the smell of the book when you're
I'll breathe it in, don't worry. Thing is, I don't want to use scissors on it. There we go.
There it goes.
And I gotta say, the packing was really good. You had these little corner like protectors. And
Yeah, we pack it with plastic corner protectors and bubble wrap around the world just in case it gets dropped or on the corner. Now, hopefully, we haven't shipped you one with completely blank pages.
Oh, that would be awesome. It's the journal. It's the dream diary.
Exactly.
All right, so there it is, all unwrapped. Got the spine there, very minimalistic. Sega Mega Drive Genesis Collected Works.
So it's black foil stamped onto textured black paper, which is just
the cover.
no ink on it at all.
Was that you that designed it?
I designed the cover and then I commissioned the illustration of the cartridge ring. The guy who did it's called Cam Tang. He's a famous illustrator.
So why the change from the initial one, which was more of like a diagram? Was that always a placeholder in your eyes?
No, it was pretty certain. And then we knew that we didn't want to have a jacket. We wanted it to be, we wanted to kind of feel the actual book itself and the print. We didn't want to use any ink on the cover. We knew we wanted to do this kind of black on black thing because the Mega Drive was all about this kind of sleek black unit. So we wanted black ink on black paper, and we found that with the diagrammatic cover that we designed initially, it went around the spine. And the tests we did, the ink breaks up around the spine, and it kind of looked quite poor. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board and kind of thought, okay, we know we want to do black on black. What's the best thing we could do? And it was something really iconic with lots of surface area. So we kind of boiled it down to this, the round cartridge design, which we thought was the kind of the iconic thing about the console. And kind of deliberately avoided the kind of gold 16-bit and purple, which you do see quite a lot of on kind of Mega Drive merchandise. Wanted this to be something different, deliberately different.
I love the little red power light right there.
And also Battlestar Galactica Cylon style light. Yeah, that was that was Cam's idea, the illustrator. He came up with that, and when we saw that, it was just like, yeah, that's fantastic.
I'll stop bringing this in, but Blake went overboard on the red.
Hey, yeah, they're matching.
Yeah,
Not very good minimalists. No.
Yeah,
I'm sure you had control over saying I want it red and black on the outside. Actually, did you? Anyway, let's crack it open. So,
hey.
Ooh, got a beautiful, all the logos here, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Menacer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I won't laugh. Oh, this is
funny about the filed peripherals inside.
So already there's even printing right here. It's hard to see, but
yeah, that's a key to the dates that the logos on the end papers were designed, and the papers are cherry red paper, kind of matches the Genesis detailing.
It's very nice. I've worked some design jobs where people would say, "Look at all this white space."
Yeah, it's a big logo there.
Very nice.
More white paper.
So for people who don't know, this is an official license.
That's right. Yeah, the official Mega Drive book.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always so impressed by what you're able to do aesthetically, and almost, it reminds me a little bit of pop, take an image that we're familiar with or something iconic, and just sort of reposition it or reframe it in a way that I always makes me feel like it's artistic and appreciate it. So I have
Thank you. Yeah.
my bedside tables, the Sensible Software book, which I also
Oh, hey. Right there by the bed. Yeah, that was
So-
our first book. That was our first book. So we were kickstarting that when
this is
when
full software.
there we are.
Also great read and beautifully put together.
Yeah.
I won't spoil too much, but that was my first entree into your work, so it's nice to see it carry through here as well.
Yeah, so that's what Sega saw, and we just decided to kind of amp everything up for this book. We were always about the kind of editorial side, sort of, and the visual side, kind of like balancing out perfectly. So we really wanted this to be more than just an art book. Sega had all of this archive stuff, but you can see that the first part of the book is very much dedicated to great writing. We wanted to have that in there, and that's what the Sensible book was based on. So this is a foreword. That's by David Perry, talking about his experiences with the Mega Drive, and about how it basically jump-started his career. And then we're into Keith Stewart, who's the Guardian Games editor's essay. He's written an 18,000-word essay on the history of the Mega Drive.
Oh, wow.
And Blake was instrumental. When we launched the Kickstarter, Blake got in touch with me and talked about his project about Console Wars and offered to put us in touch with a lot of key people who we weren't in touch with before. And from that, the essay kind of ballooned to, I think we were about 12,000 words then. And then, Blake, you put us in touch with Shinobu Toyoda and Tom Kalinske, and it just transformed the essay, and we were able to kind of piece together a lot of stuff that was previously told in narrative voice, and we got to be able to tell it from, straight from the horse's mouth, if you like.
Nice.
Well, that's good, because from my perspective, I heard about your book and I said, like, oh shit, someone else, Sega and the glory years. Yeah, of course. So, but then I, wanted to speak with you to see what the project was and if you were a friend or foe. And like I said, I saw some of your other work, fantastic. We had a good conversation, so I wanted to do anything I could to help, and I'm glad that I did, because
yeah, it worked out, huh? Yeah, and also quite different. And like Keith's essay was very kind of documentary-like. It's very kind of.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. When you first mentioned the book to me, and I think it was on the Kickstarter page as well, but I can't remember. You described it as like a documentary book,
That's right.
which I never heard before. But I think is a really great way to describe that synthesis of aesthetics and content that you're describing right now. So I was kind of curious where you came up with that terminology and what it meant to you, because obviously this is a different kind of book than you would see. This is not a coffee table book, though it would be perfect on your coffee table, but it's more than that. So where did that concept come from, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's kind of instrumental to the approach we'll take with all of our books, really. That, and I suppose again that's what it kind of sort of takes a different angle on the same subject as Console Wars. Is that it's academic makes it sound too dry, but we're taking a documentary-like approach, in that we want to document and archive things that might get lost. These things were quite a long time ago now. We had to reconstruct and kind of rebuild a lot of the imagery in the book, for example, that had been damaged. And it's the same when it comes to interviewing people who a lot of people in the book have never been interviewed before, and we wanted to give them time and space to speak properly. So yeah, it's I suppose it comes from, there's lots of kind of film history books that I really like, and I really like their approach to it, and it's semi-academic, but it's written really well and really enjoyably. And yeah, it's that kind of slightly museum-like approach. It's basically, if you were doing a exhibition about the history of the Mega Drive, this would be the book you'd go and buy in the bookshop when you left. That was always our approach, kind of curatorial rather than just sort of putting a bunch of kind of nostalgic stuff in the book. We wanted to approach it like an exhibition would approach it.
I was going to ask, there's a lot of commercial screenshots. They look so much better than I've ever seen.
That's Blake as well. So Blake, this is where we talk about your documentary, right? Yeah, Blake put us in touch with a lot of the advertising agencies who've looked after the advertising, and they were able to provide us with the original videos. So that's how they look so sharp. They've been retouched a little bit as well to make them even kind of like pin sharper. But yeah, that's why they look so much better than the ones you can see on YouTube.
Yeah, and are we ever going to have, I know, if you're using it for documentary's sake, a lot of times they'll show snippets. Is there ever going to be a way to see these in full, the commercials?
I mean, I could send them to you. But, well, as Darren knows, there's licensing issues, and for the documentary, we're able to license certain things and also get away with some fair usage things when we're referencing material. But, some of the people from Sega who were involved with creating some of these great, memorable commercials said that for the book, I should make a YouTube page and maybe even write little stories behind how this commercial was made. And I would have loved to do that, but
great.
It would be an issue to put up a YouTube page with content that's not mine. So if you're personally interested, I'm happy to send. I think I have all of them to you.
Right, because we actually had to pay them. The UK publishing law is quite draconian. And all of the actors involved we actually managed to speak to. The woman who played Aunt Bertha in the Menace advert was actually in Terminator. She was the first Sarah Connor who got the army. It's a true story. There she is. Okay. And I think actually a lot of the rights have reverted back to Sega. But we can look into that, but it could be easier than we think to actually
worth doing
like that and actually have the original videos archived properly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're willing to share them, I won't, put them out there, but it would always be nice to have just to see them,
Yeah.
Finally. We're in the
hardware documentary was my directing partner Jonah Toulis suggested the idea, and I thought, if nothing else, if it was just 90 minutes of old Nintendo and Sega commercials, like that would be interesting. I think that's pretty lazy on our part, but like, they're so fascinating just to look at that I could watch that.
Yeah,
same
absolutely.
The ESPN Sport. This is Sports Center commercials are always really great too.
Those are fantastic. We're in hardware development. Now it's getting pretty.
Yeah, so we get to the. We did so well on the Kickstarter. We were able to do some really cool things with the book. So these are the first gatefold pages in the book, and these are the kind of the jewels of the Sega archive, the Mega Drive production drawings. These are these big A1 drawings on this really thin paper, and they're hand drawn with rotary pen, and they're to scale, showing the top, bottom cases of all the different regional variations of the console. So there you see the Japanese Mega Drive, and the parts in red indicate the region-specific parts. Get get as big as possible and to scour and to see all the different details that are going on.
That's amazing. And it goes on.
Yeah,
there's really more. I didn't even fold out that page.
Yeah, on the other side there's the Genesis one, so you can see the red parts are the parts that are different for the Genesis, for the different 16-bit.
That's amazing.
They're cool, aren't they?
Very cool. Yeah. Oh, wow. I got to look at mine and compare.
Those are in the Sega of Japan archive. We sent photographers from Tokyo to photograph them in Sega because they're quite delicate. They wouldn't let them out, so we had to send photographers to shoot all this stuff. And likewise, these are rejected controller designs. So you can see that they're investigating this kind of ergonomic look, which is quite revolutionary at the time. And these are quite weird compared to what we ended up with. And you can see that they were trying for this kind of purple key color, which kind of ended up being that kind of pinky color in the end.
Master System control pad kind of here. It was square on the Master System, but I see that same sort of idea being used.
Yeah, kind of much more. The indentations are flattened. And then there we're kind of getting towards the final design. The one on the left looks quite a lot like the infrared pad that came out, actually.
Oh, it does. Huh.
And then these are marker renderings for the... this was done in Japan, but they were working on the American iteration of the console, so you can see how they got the big old Genesis decal there and the different colors.
Now, I know I've probably asked you this in the past, and I did ask Tom. Clarify again. Sega Genesis, did they change the name for a legal reason or just because they thought Mega Drive wouldn't fly in the US?
Okay, so David Rosen, who we spoke to in Keith's essay, claims that it was his idea. He didn't like the Mega Drive name, and he thought it was a new start for the company, so that's why he chose the name Genesis. There's lots of other theories that float around about Wrath of Khan, the Genesis device in that movie, and that was very much a big movie at the time. And there's lots of disputed theories on the internet. So, but maybe we've got the definitive cut. I don't know. But if Mr. Rosen said he did it, I'm tempted to believe him.
Yeah. Well, I definitely would say. I mean, I heard the same thing as you from David, and I don't think he's lying. I think that that's definitely true. But I would also believe that the Mega Drive name was legally taken here, and that prompted them to look for other names. I can ask if that was part of it, but I do believe that there was something else here called the Mega Drive, and they had to change it. But David did come up with the great name, regardless of the circumstance. And it's a good one.
Oh, these are popular. We see these a lot.
These are new, right? These are cool now. So these are the.
I think you goofed up. You have some of Sony's products from last year's E3 in here.
Yeah, totally right.
What's going on?
The Geordie LaForge version. So these are the VR prototypes, which look eerily like modern technology, like something that you'd see in Edge magazine right now. And they were developed by the outside company IDEO. We got in touch with the original designer who made the pitch to Sega, and these are his original drawings that he pitched to them. And these are the two that they selected for further development. And you know, the one that they chose, the one with the red detailing, looks pretty much like the actual prototype they made.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Oh, and here we go.
There you go. There's your arcade power stick. Was it called the arcade power stick in the States?
It was called the arcade power stick.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I have available to me. That's very cool.
So how does it smell, Barry?
The book or the arcade power stick? It smells new. It smells very nice.
Oh, that's what I've heard.
I think there's I'm sure people are loving watching me smell books online. I'm sure there's a site for that. All right, so we're looking at the 32X here, called the 32-bit.
Yeah, so this is one of the early prototype drawings for it. And then on the opposite page is a Neptune, which I think might have been called Super 32 or something similar to that, with a Mega CD Model 2 unit as well. And you could see that the 32X, they were trying to get it really close to the body of the console on that particular drawing, but it was quite raised up. I don't know if that's because of the different models, but the actual final product was actually quite sort of raised like a mushroom above the final unit. But I guess that was just part of the way that it had to be built.
Guess you can't. I mean, if you're cramming something on top of the console, you can't do much to make it look aesthetically pleasing unless it.
Yeah, and I guess if it has to fit Model 1 and Model 2, maybe there's compromises that had to be made there. Picking the Model 2, that's one of the Model 2 diagrams there. And now Cam, who did the cover, also did these great chapter openers for us, which are kind of sculptural renderings of the hardware.
Ooh, so these are the photos the much talked about photos.
Yeah, so okay, we're now into the hardware guide, which is a 18-shot gallery of some of the more common and then some of the really rare hardware stuff that goes for far too much money on eBay. We've worked with collectors. We found all this stuff. We photographed it over the period of a couple of months with John Short, who's a great product photographer, and then retouched it all so it's like brand new. So every sort of dink and scratch is removed, and hopefully they look, as they would have looked back in the early 90s out of the box.
Wow, they really kick the ass of the ones you always find on Wikipedia.
So one of the great selling points of the book is that you have never before seen blueprints and sketches and archive material from Sega of Japan's archives, but also like this stuff and the photos, the screenshots from the Goodby ads. A lot of it you found on your own as well. What were some of the hardest finds for you to get, or things that you didn't even know existed that you were shocked to find out were out there?
You're about to come to one of them, which is the Neptune prototype. There were only 3 of them, I think. We managed to find one in San Francisco, which has been shown at E3 at the time. We had to send a photographer, an American photographer, to match John's style. It's the only one that John didn't take, and he took it in a corridor at E3 with lots of people gathering around him. Apparently, it was quite a stressful photo shoot. So that was a real find that we were able to get that. There it is on the right-hand page. That's the Neptune. And again, it was pretty battered up. It's only the top case, and we've kind of restored it to its proposed beauty, if you like. And then in terms of other stuff, we were really keen to get design documents from the games, and for a while it was looking like there weren't any that were kept. And then quite late on in the research process, we found the design doc for Bare Knuckle Streets of Rage, which we, because of the Kickstarter success, were able to translate and recreate in English as well. So that was really cool. I was really pleased that we were able to get that. And yeah, just getting in touch with people, really. Mainly thanks to you, Blake, that we were able to get in touch with people like Tom Kalinske, and then another person got in contact when we did the Kickstarter that put us in touch with Haya Nakayama. So we kind of ticked all the boxes, really. There wasn't really anyone that we were kind of left wanting for.
It's wonderful.
And
Great
these are obviously game logos. All of them were sort of hand painted on board.
This is an underrated game.
Metalhead. Yeah, it's great, man.
You wouldn't even think. I think a lot of people see it and they go, "Well, that looks like some sort of weird Western developed cash-in on the 32X," but it's just
not at
official
all.
Sega of Japan title.
Max.
Oh, these are great. So these you actually can find in the old, I think, 93 or 94 Sega Video Game Illustrations book.
That's right, yeah. We were aware of that book, and Sega managed to find... The original publisher didn't have them. Sega kept negatives from that book, so we rescanned the negatives and retouched them all. So a lot of these artworks are from that book, but we've managed to get them scanned really, really high res, and we've got them up to a bigger size than in the book, and removed dust and scratches and that kind of thing. And then various collectors got in touch for stuff. Original publishers, people like Treasure, you can see there, provided us with artwork from their stuff. So it's a real sort of mix of sources for all the different artwork. Things from manuals, the actual box art. The Japanese box art's panoramic, so we've done a few more gatefold spreads where you can open them up and see that the whole box art at original size. They were painted a little bit bigger than the boxes. I think you got to one there. Yeah, so there's Altered Beast.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I think on the right-hand spread, we've got Alien Storm.
Ah, yes. Okay. Very nice.
Brains and eyes and mouths.
Wow.
How much did the idea or the concept for the book change between when you pitched it to Sega and it was accepted and what we're holding in our hands today?
Yeah, it went on sort of major mission creep, really, as we kind of... Sega suggested us, we could put you in touch with some developers. And initially we were going to interview developers and kind of feed that into Keith's essay, sort of like around 15,000 words, and have them, speaking with people like Tom. And then the essay kind of became about the business side and the marketing side, and the famous kind of the way that Sega of America transformed this Japanese machine and sort of controlled the world of gaming with it. and it didn't really fit that the developers would have much of a voice in that, because it was very much about marketing and advertising. And so we created an entirely new section for them, which is at the back, printed in a different color. It's this kind of directory of developer interviews. So all of the developers we said yes to, there's like 28 of them, and we interviewed them at full length, and the whole interviews are in there. So again, it's kind of like a academic thing, if you like, that they were able to speak at length and not just get sound bites, not just get one quote put into an essay. They get to talk about how they grew up, how they started to work at Sega, and their memories of the time, like all the little anecdotes that would get cut out if it was a kind of essay piece left in. So that was probably the biggest time sink, was translating it all and compiling and editing all of that. But
and how did you do the process of interviewing the developers? Did you physically interview them and have a Japanese translator there, or was it email questions? I mean, mostly just how did you deal with the translation issue?
So Keith wrote the questions. They were passed on to Sega, and Sega conducted the interviews, I believe over the phone or in person in Japan. And then they gave us the answers back in Japanese, and we worked with a great translator who translated them back. And then we saw if we wanted to ask any more questions, and we went through 3 rounds of interviews so we could nail down the very specific things and get the right conversational tone with it. So, often they'd say something, and then we'd be able to follow up on it, which was great. And then obviously the American interviews were American developers, people like Greg and Mark, who worked on ToeJam and Earl, Michael Latham, who worked on Eternal Champions, Pete, who worked on Comic Zone. They were just done directly, either over the phone or an email.
Here's Madonna.
Yeah, there's Madonna, who was Sonic's girlfriend for quite a long time during development before, I believe, Tom Kalinske said, nah, that's going to be weird.
Yeah.
A full-size human girlfriend.
Now, a lot of people, did people push for ToeJam and Earl later in the book's creation?
You mean to include ToeJam and Earl archive material?
I always feel like they always kind of come later, like when people are talking about Sega titles, and then the ToeJam and Earl fans come out and they go, "Wait, what about ToeJam and Earl?" Yeah,
it could get easily fall between the cracks. I'm a huge ToeJam and Earl fan, so I think we've got a little bit sort of. I've kind of erred on squeezing it in where I can, because I think it's one of the Mega Drive's great games. It's kind of up there with Sonic in terms of genre breaking and these great characters. So Greg and Mark have a huge cachet of archive material, production sketches. One of the guys who produced a lot of the character designs for it has gone on to work at Pixar. He directed Brave, I think. Oh, wow. And so Mark kept it all, and he scanned loads of it. And I think, Blake, you've got some of the stuff in the Console Wars plate section. ToeJam and Earl.
Yeah. He sent it to me. That was one of my favorite games, and to me, that game is always what I think about when people ask, the difference between games now and then. And there's a million differences. But what I love so much, and I feel like you would appreciate it too, for the aesthetic reasons, is I felt like every game from the 8-bit and 16-bit era had a really unique vision, and that's a byproduct of having it be created and programmed by a single person or a group of 2 or 3. And anytime you're going to have more cooks in the kitchen, it often will lead to good things, but it's not going to be as. I feel like ToeJam and Earl just wouldn't happen nowadays because it's weird. It's very weird. But whether you like it or like, it has a very specific and unique tone, and I just love it so much because that to me is what a game from the 90s felt like and looked like, and you wouldn't get that anymore.
Yeah, it's perfectly the 90s video game. And in fact, Greg says that in his interview, that initially it was a real slow build. It sold a lot of copies, but initially reviewers didn't know what to make of it. And I think that speaks a lot of Sega backing it and making sure that they got it. I think Electronic Arts were after it as well. And yeah, the fact that they believed in it, and they weren't kind of worried about it being just a genre-less. Like, I still can't quite describe it in terms of a person who's never played it before. So yeah, it's a real favourite for me, and there's heaps of ToeJam and Earl stuff in the book. So this is the Streets of Rage design document that we translated. Really super technical, going through all the moves, about how the collision detection works. Lots of things that they were proposed that they weren't able to fit in the game. There's some really cool stuff about being able to vault over oil drums and vault over walls, which wasn't included. Oh yeah, that's cool. diagram there, and that didn't make it into the game, but you could kind of see how it would have worked, and maybe that it was kind of just down to the kind of time that they had. There's a really cool mixture of seeing the game that you know and love broken down and deconstructed, and then these other kind of routes and avenues that they were obviously experimenting with when they were making it.
That's fascinating.
And this is from Michael Latham gave us these. These are background designs for Eternal Champions.
Oh, wow. Here we are, Sonic stuff again.
Yeah, so again, familiar stuff, and then some stuff that was like, oh, okay, right, that didn't make it. There's a Chinese world. It's one of the Zone ideas. And then this shows an intro sequence and a proposed end sequence to Sonic. And again, there's things that just seem completely alien to the Sonic universe, and then sort of things that are very defining. And description of a boss battle that is nothing like how Sonic ended up. It takes place in an enclosed room and is almost like it's kind of less about the frenetic gameplay and less about the kind of using Sonic to bash Eggman's Eggmobile, and it's puzzle solving and avoiding lasers. So you could still see they were kind of trying to hammer down the gameplay and what Sonic did and how it worked.
Yeah. I see him with a giant eagle.
Yeah, I think that was one of his friends from the Sonic band that got cut as well.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I see them down there. There's the monkey. Huh.
Yeah, he had a bunch of animal friends who he had a band with, and I think in the Nato Oshima interview they talk about him breakdancing, and they're playing a song, and then Sonic sings, and I think they'd actually animated it from what he said, but they couldn't fit it in due to the restriction of the cartridge size. If we could find that would be amazing.
Let's see, they also have a lot of... This kind of reminds me of your previous book. You had a lot of just characters and sprites.
Yeah, kind of like drawings. A grid of characters. So this is kind of like a sort of encyclopedic bit of individual character portraits. And they're all numbered. I think there's like about 800 figures in the book of pixel art and hand-drawn art. And at the back we've got a big index, and they're all named. They're Japanese names, American names, and alternative names. So you can make reference to that, or just kind of leaf through them. That's Golden Axe 3.
Here's Eternal Champions.
So last week, Darren, or a few days ago at least, we were talking about what it was like for you to see this thing that was on your computer now be in the hands of people around the world, and it was almost all in your head, or you and Keith and Sega.
Yeah, like a win. Yeah.
And I could speak also about the book that was on my computer and now is in people's homes. It was a weird process. What is it like for you a week later? Has it changed at all, or do you still have that same just
kind of surreal feeling that it's not mine anymore? Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It's really nice. We've had so much kind of feedback, and doing things on Kickstarter is great because you get to speak to nearly everybody who buys it, which is kind of weird and new for a book publisher. So they kind of know me, and I kind of know a lot of them, and that's really cool. And people are feeding back and telling me about specific things, and it's really nice. Yeah, basically what Blake was describing was that I was working on this so long and for like 12 months and working on it mostly solo, and then having it on a computer, and then suddenly having this physical object and it being sent around the world was quite surreal. But yeah, it's really nice to be able to actually kind of talk about a physical object rather than kind of endlessly tweaking and obsessing over the things. So you're in the game art section now, which is printed against black, and again, this is kind of like an encyclopedic kind of almost like a kind of natural history kind of book, as if you kind of archive fossils or something like that. We've notated every sprite, all the great kind of boss sprites and all of the kind of iconic hero sprites and backgrounds, and they're there as a kind of resource. I suppose, like, kind of game artists or game designers, I kind of feel like this could be something that could be useful, kind of seeing, the Sega backgrounds, the parallax, it's such a kind of distinctive look. I kind of feel that archiving all of that was really interesting to do. We've removed all the sprites from the backgrounds, and they're just there as little kind of postcards of each of the levels, and the same with the sprites. They're there to be kind of studied and you know, kind of poured over, or you know, if you just love those games, just kind of going back and finding your kind of favorite boss or whatever. I thought that would be cool.
This is great, just because I remember in the game you'd never really see him full screen too much.
Yeah, that's right. You just see kind of the top quarter, but actually they created the whole sprite.
It almost looks like a 3D rendering that they then, you know, like with 3D Blast, where they give it that kind of quasi CG look. It almost doesn't look drawn. I don't know.
Yeah, almost towards the fashion of the kind of Donkey Kong Country pre-rendering stuff. Yeah, I wonder if that was the case. And then that's we're into Gunstar Heroes here, all the crazy bosses.
This is the weirdest one you have in the entire book, I think.
Is he? Yeah, I think he might be called Melon Bread.
Of course.
Watch out for number 448. She's kind of upcoming.
48. Hold on.
There she is.
That's nightmare fuel.
I think she's simply called Rebecca. Those are the Japanese and Western differences between the bosses in Dynamite Headdy.
Yeah.
They kind of westernized some of the bosses because they were pretty weird.
So this is a westernized version of that?
No, the robot is the Western version, and then Rebecca, who's the doll, is the boss in the Japanese version. And likewise above, the geisha robot is the Japanese boss, and then on the left, the robot is the Western boss. So those are the two changes they made.
Okay. That's interesting. This is creepy too. Old man head with a key in his
that's great, isn't it? That's a composite. Throughout the that level, the boss changes, and we put that together in a kind of Russian doll type arrangement. And then these are kind of more classic Sega bosses. We've got Altered Beast and Alien Storm and Space Harrier 2.
Nice. Space Harrier 2 being a launch title. That's cool.
Yeah. We've got Rystar and Vector Man as well. Again, it's kind of one of those late era Mega Drive games that is like a real technical showcase for the console. We spoke to Rich Karp, whose interview's in there, who directed the game, and he talks about a lot of the technical tricks that they put into the game to kind of squeeze the last kind of little bits out of the Mega Drive, things that had never been seen before. It runs at 60 frames a second, and they were trying to do all these really amazing technical things. I remember the printer sending me an email about this particular spread. They were kind of worried that I'd duplicated some of the sprites. And basically, I was having to have just an explanation with our Italian printer in sort of broken English that no, the Streets of Rage sprites are very, very slightly different throughout each of the three games. I think they just kind of gave up and went, okay, as long as you're happy.
If you say okay, then they're not held.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
So, kind of on that note, is there anything since the book came out that incorrect or a misspelled word or something that you already want to change, or is that are you still
as soon as it finishes, I'm like, I think we got contacted by, there was a great a collector who's been really, really helpful in terms of getting us some artwork, and then he sent me an email the other day saying, oh, I found some of the Mega Drive artwork. I can't remember what it was he found, but he found another painting, and I was just kind of like, oh man, it was just after we sent it to print, so I kind of feel like we could endlessly add to it as things come up. I mean, a lot of people got in touch really late on in the process saying, I heard you're doing this book, I've got this Sonic painting, and it was like, oh my god, amazing, we thought that had been lost. A lot of the Sonic paintings were really hard to track down, and they were all through collectors. And they came in really, really late, and we were, desperately trying to push things back just to get them, get a photographer out, and they're all in America, get them shot and get them into the book. So, yeah, that's already happened, basically. Yeah.
Was this? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that was just a nice thing for me because as soon as I turned in the final draft, people would say, "Oh, I just remembered a new story you should put in the book," and I'd be like, "No, why did you remember that?"
Yeah, right.
It's actually been like a good thing because what fueled my desire to write the book was just an interest and a curiosity, and that has not dissipated. So I still do interviews and do phone calls, and maybe it'll be in a paperback version, maybe it'll be
I was gonna say
maybe it'll just be in my head, but I'm sure that you'll still appreciate getting photos of Sonic paintings or whatever, and the nicest thing for the book has been that it's brought out people from the woodwork that have found archival material or who are remembering stories, and just a book like this and my book, I think, help preserve that history by just making people aware that it is important in its history and that they should be sharing
and it's worth something.
Yeah.
So will there be a revised Console Wars down the line, do you think, with extra content?
Yeah, well, there'll be a paperback version in May of next year, and I have some things I want to change, and there are some spelling mistakes that I unfortunately have in the book. But I also am going to be writing some articles and short stories to just capture other things that I don't think are central to the narrative in the book, but are extremely fascinating and deserve their story to be told.
Yeah, amazing. I got the feeling with this book, we were talking about the kind of file on your computer thing. There's a point where you've just got to publish it, and you could always go back, and you could always work on things, or add a new sections, or interview more people, or whatever. And there gets a point where you just have a kind of a level of quality you want to hit, and you kind of have to put it out there and then see what people think, and come back to it again. And there'll be other books, and we'll improve upon our publications every time, hopefully. But yeah, I held on to it for a long time, as our backers will testify. It was late, but hopefully it's.
And so, what is next for you and for the company? Would you want to do something else with Sega, with Nintendo, video games, anything outside? Like, what do you know?
Yes, we signed 3 more books. We're talking to other publishers. Since we've done this, we've been really lucky. We've got some really exciting conversations going on. Other companies of kind of Sega's size liked it, really liked it, and they kind of want the treatment. So yeah, it's a really exciting time. So from the first book to this, it kind of feels like everything's kind of growing quite quickly, and it's next year is really exciting. What we've got planned. I really want to do the little stuff as well as the big kind of Mega Drive book type things. But yeah, we've got some cool stuff coming up. And so now you're into the directory section, the interviews. There's 45,000 words, 28 developers, musicians, product design. You're on the page there of the guy who designed the actual casing for the Mega Drive, worked on that team. And he's never spoken before, never been interviewed before. But the person who designed the motherboard, got Yuji Naka, Yu Suzuki talking about Outrun. It's a huge kind of resource, basically. There's very silly stories about people sleeping under their desks at Sega and jumping in a car with too many people to go and buy noodles. And then there's really technical stuff about how hardware sprites are used to do certain bosses and all the kind of technical tricks that they use to do certain things. Bosses that were removed. It's just full of nuggets, basically, of Sega history.
Very cool.
And as I said, we've just let people talk. It's been edited to make everything really tight, but we've not we've let people be really technical. Like Yuzo Koshiro's interview is super technical, but I get the feeling that if you're a musician and you know about technical, the technical side of making music for video games, there's going to be a load of stuff there that's going to be really interesting to you. So we really wanted to just not dumb it down at all, just kind of have them talk how they talk.
I appreciate too that you didn't split it like halfway through the book. You're now getting into the Genesis part. You're seeing here Japanese developers and people mixed with Western developers, and was
and
that a conscious decision?
Weirdly, Tomoyuki Ito, who did the Super Shinobi 2, it talks about Greg and Mark and about how much he loved Toe Jam and Earl and how much it was this exotic game, and you kind of think, wow, yeah, what would it have been like to have played Toe Jam and Earl, in Japan at that time when, we all saw Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and, we knew about De La Soul, maybe, and it was kind of like, okay, this kind of makes sense, but this is like mind-blowing still, but for that in the kind of Japanese market, it was amazing to hear somebody talk about that.
Well, I love the motif that you have in the top left of every interview, the signature from each of the...
Oh, yeah, so we got everybody's signature. Yeah, so it's a nice bit of personality. We decided we didn't want photographs, just because it was kind of like a cliche to have the photograph and the name. So we wanted something else, and I think it's really nice. So we got everybody to sign and scan their signature, so they're all printed next to each of the.
Very cool.
That's Kan Naito, who worked on Landstalker. That's another kind of cult favorite. We got a lot of requests for people to have Landstalker stuff in there, so it was really cool that we got to speak to him.
Rystar.
Yeah, Kira Nishino, who directed Rystar. So I don't know if you can see it on the video as well. This section is printed on a grey paper, and it's on this really bright blue Sonic glue, basically ink. It really kicks out. It's really bright. So this kind of feels a bit different. It's kind of like a kind of it feels like kind of I don't know if you ever got Japanese comic books. They were like printed on pink paper or grey paper or something like that. It has that kind of earthy feel to it. We wanted it to feel more like a pulpy, that you could kind of like swipe through it and stick a bookmark in it. It's much less precious than the rest of the book, so it offers a nice contrast as well.
It is cool. Yeah, I definitely get that vibe. I have a lot of art books where it's the first 2/3 are all these beautiful pieces of paper, and then you get to the back and it's just kind of like the blue copy you have here.
Yeah, I love that.
Happy, shocked, distressful.
Yeah, so there's a portrait of Vector Man from Rick Schmitz, the designer. He sent those across for us.
That's awesome.
And I think that's the musician who worked on Shadow Dancer, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's about 3 musicians in there, and they all talk about each other and how they worked. A lot of them were freelance and didn't actually work at Sega. It's interesting to hear that Yuzo Koshiro didn't really work in-house at all. He sent all of his stuff in on discs and tapes and worked purely from his flat. And then Yu Suzuki. And it talks about, we let him talk about the arcade stuff because obviously that's what he was most famous for, and he talks about Afterburner and then the Mega Drive conversions as well. So there's talk around and outside of the Mega Drive. Talks about Alien Storm and Golden Axe. So just kind of he goes off and talks about the arcade experience as well, because it is relevant with the Mega Drive, which is basically kind of like an arcade simulator initially.
And kudos for not breaking your composure and just saying like, "Where the hell is Shenmue 3?" And he'd be like, "No comment." It's just I love Yu Suzuki. I love Shenmue, but it's refreshing when he talks about something that's not Shenmue. I think when he's in the public eye, a lot of people ask the Shenmue questions. But this is very cool. But hey, when you get to that Dreamcast book, you can talk about
exactly Shenmue. Right. The book,
these are adorable
on its own.
These are very cool.
So what page are the musical documents from Michael Jackson's work on the Sonic 3?
Oh, man. Yeah, right. If they kept that. We spoke to Craig Stitt. We didn't include that. He talked about meeting Michael at Sega and about him coming in, and really funny stories about him being shown around STI. That must yeah. I mean, thinking about Console Wars films, that moment must have been the most sort of surreal moment. I think they took a bomber jacket that somebody was wearing, an STI bomber jacket. They were saying that he had, and said, "You've got to give it to Michael Jackson." And they instantly kind of like hanging things on him as he walked around, giving him things, giving him plush Sonics, that kind of thing.
I have a question here about. No, I don't want to butcher his name. Manabu.
Oh, the Bonanza Brothers artist.
Kusunoki. Now he's credited as graphic designer here, and I always felt that Bonanza Brothers had a very graphic kind of look, almost as though you couldn't really classify it as illustration or drawing. So that's interesting. So he was a trained graphic designer, and he got into video games, but his formal training was in graphic design. And it's funny, Barry, you're a graphic designer as well, right? And yes,
I love the look of Bonanza Brothers, so it was really cool to speak to him. And a lot of the questions I kind of guided Keith on, because this particular game I kind of felt, hang on, this kind of draws from maybe Milton Glaser and lots of kind of really graphic stuff. Everything's boiled down and it's very kind of primitive and blocky, checkerboardy, and kind of proto-Sonic in a way. And he pretty much confirmed that a lot of the artistic references he was taking were from Japanese illustration and not from the video games, which is really interesting. And it was like, yes, it is. It's a graphic designer's game, really.
That's very cool. Okay, here's Yuzo Koshiro.
Here's Shiro.
The chiptune scene.
Yeah, so he talks about chiptune. There's some kind of like sort of modern questions in there as well.
It's interesting. Oh, I skipped a page. All right, and then we're getting in here.
Oh, so there's your underrated Metalhead. We spoke to the developer of Metalhead.
Very cool.
Purely about the game and the development of it. Working on the 32X at the time. The 32X was quite a rushed development, and he talks about developing this game at the time. And that's really interesting because I really like Metalhead as well. So it's nice to have. We've got Stellar Assault in there as well.
Oh, nice.
Developer for that, and it's quite nice to have people talking about games that aren't just Golden Axe, that aren't just Streets of Rage. We've got some other curiosities in there as well. That's Nishizawa-san, who developed all the Wonder Boy games.
Yeah.
His interview is very funny. He kind of rails on Mario quite a lot.
Oh, nice. Oh, I see here, talking about Mario.
Yeah, he said he always hated the control system and that Wonder Boy was kind of like an artistic response to how a platform should be done.
That's funny. You have Tomoyuki Ito.
Yep. So he was the guy who was brought in. Super Shinobi 2, The Return of the Ninja Master, or Shinobi 3, I think it was called in the States, which is a great game, one of my favourite games. Was in a real state, like I think for about sort of 6 months of development, it was just kind of not going anywhere, and he was brought in as a firefighter, and he was brought in to fix it, and he talks about his time coming in, basically pulling the game apart, removing loads of stuff, and rebuilding the game in a really, really short period of time. So it's an amazing story, and it was really brave what they did. They pulled out loads and loads and loads of stuff and rebuilt all the levels at a really late period. So that's a great interview. That's one of my favourites.
Wow, that's fascinating. We're getting into Naoto Oshima.
Oshima, so the designer of Sonic,
Yeah.
and talks about this, iconic development of the character. Starting with I believe they started with a bear. Yuji Naka suggested that the bear could roll, and that's where they got the kind of rolling idea. And then they kind of thought, well, it needs to be fast. And I think he'd drawn a hedgehog, and they decided that was the one to go for. So yeah, there's lots of anecdotes from development there.
Blake, on the subject of Sonic, and you can stop me if you want. I remember a little bit ago we talked about a Sonic movie.
Yes.
Do you have any details on that?
The Sonic movie from 1995 that never happened.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I'm finishing up writing a story about it. But yeah, I was able to get my hands on the 2 treatments from different screenwriters that they put together. They were both very terrible. It was definitely a good thing it didn't happen. Yeah.
You say 95?
Coming out soon. What did you say?
Did you say 95?
Yeah, it was supposed to come out Christmas '95 to sort of coincide with the launch of the Saturn-ish kind of.
Was it animated or?
That is where it gets really terrible.
Oh, no, not live action.
One of them was like half live action and half takes place in the video game world, sort of like a Roger Rabbit type thing.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And one of them was all live action, but it created a new origin story for Sonic where a teenage boy becomes Sonic the Hedgehog. Like a human boy for 16 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We have real life stories of the Mario one where little boys grow up to become plumbers.
Yeah.
That must be the influence.
So where can we find this piece you're working on? Is it in a secret project or?
No, it's not secret at all. It's going to be. I'm writing it for IGN, and I'll be handing it into them probably this weekend. So hopefully it'll be up.
I don't wait for that.
But that was another thing that was kind of like we were talking about. I had heard vaguely about a Sonic movie, and it made sense because there was the Mario movie during this time period. So I didn't mention in the book, but I didn't know very much about it. I didn't know that there were specific details or how far it had gone. And then someone found someone actually had the contract with MGM, where they had the licensing deal. And so I got that from Michael and Risley, and I thought, wow, I didn't realize it was so far along that MGM had licensed it, and there were screenwriters attached. And I was able to get in touch with the screenwriter, and then Shinobu Toyota actually had some old treatments. So, that was something where I'm glad that I didn't just say, oh no, I don't want to know about this, it wasn't in the book, I missed it. because it was just really fascinating. And I'm just surprised by how bad it would have been.
Oh man.
There's probably an obvious answer, but what actually happened? Why were they canned?
It's mostly various versions of the obvious answer, between the Mario movie being a failure, between the Saturn not really working out so well, between there was the Sonic comic, there was the 2 cartoons, and there was the American-Japan relationship and different versions, different views of what Sonic should have been. So it was a lot of those reasons, and I'll discuss it in more detail. But there was no like big dramatic event that I didn't expect, where someone, broke a camera or set or something like that.
Can't wait.
Wow. Yeah, I remember the comic books were talking about, hey, and kids, next year you're going to see Sonic in theaters. And they were making jokes. They were saying, yeah, Michael J. Fox is going to play him, and then Tails would appear, and he'd say, but shouldn't he play me because I'm a fox? And bad.
Oh man,
bad jokes. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for that anecdote. I wanted to squeeze it in as we're looking at the book.
Yeah, because it did just about everything you can with Sonic. Why not a movie? And
it's coming. It's going to be happening soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, now they are. Yeah.
Let's just hope they didn't dig up one of those treatments you found.
A live action boy.
Oh man.
That was the best. The other one was like, I can actually see it working and being a cheesy 90s movie, but the one with the live action boy. And it was basically he goes to like an Island of Dr. Moreau type situation, where a lot of the characters in Sonic that we know are like savage, half human, half animals, and it was really like, it was dark, but not in a gritty way. It was just like.
I mean, I would pay really good money to watch that, but.
Wow, wow.
So you're at the final interview of the book, which is Greg and Mark, and we've done something special with the last interview. They talked together. We've interviewed them together.
Oh, fair.
And they're very much a team. There's a real bromance between Greg and Mark. Mark is the coder, the technical whiz, and then Greg is the creative one. He helped write a lot of the music. He did the sound effects himself. He came up with the idea of Toe Jam and Earl and who they were in the world, and they just worked together. They said quite heavily caffeinated for about a year making this game, and they still get on really well, and they've got an amazing relationship, and it comes across. They talk to each other in the interview and talk about how they put things together, and there's a really nice chemistry between them, and it was just the perfect that we had to finish with that interview. It's really lovely and heartwarming.
Oh, and it's fitting too, given Toe Jam and Earl are a duo.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So I saw a little peek of what's to come. Are these the Greg Martin sketches?
Easter eggs at the back. So this is we wanted to have some Greg Martin stuff in there, and we found these original drawings for. I think there was just an emotional drawing on the left, and then we've got Sonic Spinball. So in this one color section, it seemed appropriate to have these sketches. Now this is Rick Smith's ideas for Vector Man. This kind of kind of almost Soviet style ideas for the character. And Pete Morowike, who did Comic Zone, gave us these original pencil drawings for the levels, and they refer back to later in the book where we have the actual pixel art of the levels, but these are the paper plans that were done.
That's fantastic.
And this was one of the Monster World games. There was only one protagonist, but originally there were two, and so these show the two protagonists. Eventually, it was just the female one that was chosen.
Oh, wow!
And then this is one of my favourites. This is Mick McGinty, who famously did kind of lots of the 16-bit home console stuff. This is one of his early drawings for Streets of Rage 2. Is it? Yeah, I can see that. And
yeah,
the characters are not characters in the game, and we spoke to him about it, and says it's a version of Axel, and he's fighting a robot who isn't in the game. And basically, I think he said that they described the game to him over the phone and sent him some Polaroids in the post, and they were already fuzzy. So he was just kind of imagining this world that may well have fed back into the game itself. But this is a rejected cover for Streets of Rage 2.
That's very funny.
And then, yeah, it's just the technical stuff, and right at the end as well, we've got some more logos another logo showcase. We've got the benefactors. Everybody who took part in the Kickstarter gets their name in it forever.
Wow.
Any reprints we do, they'll always be in the book.
In alphabetical order?
Alphabetical by surname, which turns out is very difficult to do.
Hey, Barry the Nomad Harmon.
You're in there.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, we wanted to do it in the kind of sort of museum benefactor style. Often you go into museums and see all the people who give money to keep museums afloat. It kind of seems appropriate that we do that in the book as well, since everybody made it happen. And you know, the gatefolds and the extra ink and the extra paper and the extra pages, they're all because of this success. So there's always going to be 6 pages of densely packed names at the end.
Yeah. Any all-stars from Sega's past in here?
Totally, yeah. You can see a David Rosen in there.
Oh, really?
You can see a David Perry. Again, Pete, Comic Zone Pete. I think Rich Carr might be in there. There's Max Senor, who worked at STI. I think there might be more besides. Like afterwards, I realised that people who backed us were ex-Sega.
I love how it's just, name. Oh yeah, David Rosen, whatever.
Yeah, I know, right?
That bold and about that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, with a stick on arrow. Yeah, that was really exciting.
Very cool. Oh wow, it's really a fantastic book. Here we have the special thanks.
Special thanks. Yeah, Blake is there.
Oh wow.
And Barry, you're thanked as well, because you were really helpful throughout the process.
Oh wow, there I am. Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, the Nomad.
Right below Peter Chuckles.
Yeah, Peter Chuckles. Yeah, he helped us a lot.
Oh wow. Oh, thanks. I'm honored.
And then if you
that's great. Thanks so much. I didn't know that, Darren.
No problem. Well, yeah, you helped, and as everyone's just heard, really instrumental in making the book just that little bit more special and more definitive. And I deliberately put one of the logos on the last end papers. We've also got a logo guide, and the British. I don't know if you're familiar with the British advertising for the Mega Drive, but
a little bit.
Advertising campaign, and throughout like really late nights, and it was just dragging on, and like doing Kickstarter updates saying, I think it's going to be a bit late. There was always that phrase that came into my head as some sort of like vain reassurance. To be this good takes ages. That was the UK advertising slogan. So it's kind of like a joke to ourselves that this book took a long time to put together, but hopefully it was worth it. So yeah, there's some other cool logos. The Genesis Does logo there, the Nomad, the Wonder Mega, as a kind of like graphic guide in one colour.
What's this one from?
It's a bit out of focus. Which one is that?
16-bit.
Oh, so that is that's from the Japanese box. The original iteration of the Asian Mega Drive had that 16-bit logo on it. It was never used on hardware, but it was just used on the box. And I thought it was very cool, very 70s. So we included that one as well.
Very cool. Well, hey, that's the whole book. My hands hurt now. No, but wow, that's really, really great. Just compressed history of the. I don't know. I'd say it's my favorite Sega console. Would you say it's yours?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it hit me when I was like 10 years old and burned into my brains ever since. It was just the right age when it hit me.
Wow. Well, hey, I want to thank both you guys for paging through it with me, sharing some stories. I want to thank you too, Blake, for kind of serving as a co-interviewer. I guess it's in your blood.
Hey, I'm just curious, and I think we've said it 10 times each, but it really is a fantastic book. It's more than just a book, and it's nice in an age where digital books are becoming the norm, and there's a reason why it's so easy to show why there's still such a need for tangible things to hold in your hands, because it's nice to hold this book and to know that I'm going to have it for the next 50 years of my life. Health.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
And any final words from you, Darren?
No, well, thank you for presenting it. Also, black on black again. I like the stage you've set. The book's available to buy.
Where should people buy it?
Yeah, you can buy it from our site.
Memory.vg.
And as we were saying, it's packed in special plastic protectors. So if you're in America, wherever you are, it's going to arrive safely. Yeah. So that's about it, really.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Blake, for joining us. Thank you, Darren, especially for your hard work on this project that came to fruition. You know, a lot of Kickstarters, they see a lot of trouble, but I feel like I know there was a few delays, but honestly, this is a Kickstarter that was well worth kicking.
Thank you very much.
So on that note, I will stop the and thank you guys again so much, and we'll